Let me tell you a little bit about what the Commerce Hub does. First of all, you might not believe it, but the airport is a department of the City and County of Denver. So it's not its own authority, it doesn't stand alone, but we're an enterprise fund, which in government language means every dollar we earn is spent in that cycle there. It's not spent anywhere else, it's always spent in that enterprise fund. So the city has about 1,500 employees that work at the airport, but there's 35,000 people badged. So we have partners in terms of airlines, car rental companies, contractors, goods and service providers, all of those other functions are there, TSA, security, police department, fire department, all of that stuff. We're really actually a city within a city. You may be surprised we even have a morgue. We have a mini jail, holding cell basically to deal with issues that we might see coming up. Last year we had about 64 million people pass through the airport. We're expecting about 65 million this year. The airport, based on new technology and stuff like that, can actually grow to 170 million passengers going through there a year. Obviously there would be some expansion with that. So Chris was talking a little bit about what was happening economically, because we listened to a economist that AGC brought in, the Associated General Contractors. And the interesting thing about that conversation that I took away is that they're seeing like a dip in growth. It's not significant, but a slowing down of growth in the private sector. But there's an uptick in the public sector. So all of a sudden, we're seeing more and more interest in terms of general contractors and everybody else getting interested in public work as they start to see things start to go a little bit down in the private side. So as Chris was explaining, the City and County of Denver has an SBE program and an MWBE program. We call the SBE as a prime program. The MWBE is a subcontractor program, because you're usually going to be working with a GC. It's unlikely that you would have 100% on a contract in terms of even something like in terms of what you're doing. You're always going to be to a trade, like to a contractor or to part of the organization. Same with everybody that I'm here in terms of doing businesses. There's also, you should know, opportunity for, if you're trying to grow your landscaping business, for you to actually scale to deal with some of the things that are at the airport to subcontract, or the city. So we're partners also with the City and County of Denver, which is also like for facilities and parks and recreation and capital improvement program, that there's work there as well that we can help guide you to. So it's not just at the airport, but at the city as a whole. And the city itself is going to have, just the City and County of Denver, without the airport, it's going to have about a $2.25 billion capital program over the next 3 years. And the airport's having probably a $3.5 billion, and it'll still grow after that, because we never stop changing and moving and trying to increase capacity. So there's something always going on at the airport. So what the airport's really interested in doing too is actually building what I call our bench. We want people that can come there, work there, grow there, scale there, sell your business if you need to, if you're going to look for succession planning. So there's an opportunity, there's a continuum or a pathway in the city to be able to do some of that. So what I want to do though here today is help you navigate our website to figure out how you would find out opportunities and stuff. But before we get started, we just quickly introduce everybody. So would you?
Sure. My name is Paul Simmons. I am from Denver. I have 2 businesses. I'm a content creator on one business and a fashion accessory designer for the other.
Okay. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
So in order to, the easiest way, and I put things on your chairs, the first thing is a description of the Commerce Hub. And if you need to contact me, I'm on that list as well in terms of staff and contact and email and phone number information. So that's essentially our mission. We really try to interface and work with small and minority businesses. And also, we do a lot of partnering with prime contractors. We have procurement in terms of goods and services, but we also primarily have construction, which is design, engineering, technology, those kinds of supports like landscaping, those kinds of things. So for your project management folks that may be coming up, there may be actually even employment opportunities through the city and county of Denver for people to become city employees and working there. So we do a lot. We spend about $300 million a year in procurement, and that's goods and services. And it's like what the airport needs in terms of supplies, materials, could be services like musicians, that kind of stuff in terms of what we do for during the holiday season. So it's a real wide scope and variety of opportunity. Okay, the easiest way to get into our website and our information is flydenver.com. Pretty easy to remember, just flydenver.com. And then what that does is it opens you up to actually the passenger website. But if you look down here, you see the bar, the second bar, it says business. So I just clicked on that. So it opens you up into the business website, which is where all of our opportunities and stuff are listed. So immediately what you'll see is all the procurements that are currently out, and these are formal procurements. So this means you are looking at something that I can't talk to you anymore about, Misha can't talk to you anymore about, because it's in a formal procurement process, which means you have to go through answering questions through the contract administrator and stuff like that to make sure that it's fair to everybody. So what's interesting about that, though, is, for instance, this will make sense to you or not, but for instance, if you go into the procurement, so the interesting thing about procurement that you should be aware of is, like, if you're interested in a particular project, look when it goes into formal procurement, there's a plan holders list that you see to the right. You see that? This thing right here. If you go onto that plan holders list, it shows every single person, their name, company, email, phone number that has picked up that plan. So you're going to know who's even interested in that procurement. It's a good way to market yourself because you're seeing people on there that you could actually say, hey, I'm interested in partnering with you, or I'm interested in getting to know you or to partner with you on work at the airport. So that's really important in terms of knowing that. And then from there, it goes to the selection process, and then it goes to the interview, and then selection of that particular firm. So now if you go back up to what the airport's also created is future opportunities, which basically, as you see, there's 4 service categories, 4 headers on there. Services, construction-related services, revenue development, goods, and also den real estate. So if you go into any of those headers, what it's going to do is give you like a description of, for instance, AGTS on-call support is for the train system. So it's going to tell you that we're seeking a contract for that kind of support. It gives you a general description of the scope of work, and then it also tells you if there's an MWBE goal on it or not. So the goal essentially will tell you in terms of if you were certified in that area, or if it says SBE, like race gender neutral goal, that's what they're looking for in terms of participation on that. It gives you the date that it was advertised, and it gives you actually the date that was posted, which is on the very end, and then it gives you kind of an estimate of the range of the size of the project. So you can say, does that fit my wheelhouse? Does that fit my ability to perform? So like foliage service and maintenance, If you're a company expanded into like building facilities in terms of doing plant and green maintenance and stuff like that, you could go in there and say, well, maybe that's something we could compete for at the airport. So it tells you essentially that second one is like it's a foliage support system, $350,000 to $450,000 a year is kind of what they think the contract will be. Then it tells you the post date. We expect to actually put that into formal procurement by January of 2019. So it gives you some kind of a heads up in terms of planning. Now the other thing that you need to know is once you get past this 90 days and you go to that formal procurement, it could take 3 to 4 months to actually go through the procurement and the selection process. So it could take you 6 months after the time you submit to actually know if you've been selected or not, and then know you'd go into contract negotiations. So if you're thinking this is like snap and you got it, that's going to be hard for you because it's a year. So it's part of your strategic planning. It's like what you need to talk about in terms of where are you trying to be and what timing could you expect in terms of some of these things coming through. The other thing to do here is, so if you look at revenue development, that's going to be concessions. So, and if anybody's interested in concessions, like if you're a small startup, you might want to look at something in terms of retail, in terms of how you could market to existing retail concessionaires, or how you might also work on a kiosk. And there's some information here to talk about that. So in terms of planning long term, what would you do to do that? So if you have questions about that, you can talk to me about afterwards. The goods and services category here is probably where if you're smaller, you may want to take a look at.
While you're
Doing that?
yes, the estimated value, project value, is that something that they feel the project is worth, or are you able to get in there and negotiate your actual cost of what it may take to get those things accomplished?
What happens there is that's just a range to tell you, because we don't want to like we don't want to tell you what we're willing to pay. We're saying we think that's what the value is, the range. How you figure out costs and stuff like that, that gives you a benchmark, but then you have to tell us, because that's going to be part of your proposal. So it's not necessarily what will be accepted. Let me see. Okay, so now this is where a lot of your in small arenas, if you go to the goods and services line that I just went, what this is going to do where it says learn more is going to put you into the city and county of Denver's.
There's a button right here. You click
Right
on
here?
one of those and
It'll do it. It'll help me.
should.
Okay.
Oh, not that one. This one.
Okay, we'll go this. Okay, so what we do, purchasing, this is where if you're a startup and we talked about your, for instance, your cleaning business, and even some of the retail business and stuff like, or even the landscaping that you're talking about, and even your services for the support for the engineering group, is that the purchasing department is who this airport goes through for these kinds of services, for goods and services. But it also handles for the rest of the city, and it's also part of the statewide BidNet, which is like 30,000 opportunities a day that you can go in there and start to find, and you can actually have notifications pushed to you. What's good about the city and county of Denver is that we, every Thursday, our staff in purchasing put out a calendar of solicitations. So you can actually see, hear what people are looking for in terms of, and whether they're under the procurement ordinance for MWBE or not. but it actually says like consultant services for transition plan and ADA compliance. So if that's your bag, that's something that you could go in and say, okay, without going on to BidNet, it'll push you into BidNet, which you can either join for free or pay an annual fee. But that's another way of getting into those 50,000 and under contracts. And if you're like a small contractor and you're doing landscaping or you're doing the cleaning and stuff like that, there'll be those kinds of contracts there that you could actually compete for, that actually helps to build your company. And so, and then here's a list of like upcoming solicitations. So carpet for park and recreation maintenance. So you start to see those kinds of things and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Golf course supplies, bread for correctional facilities. It's like, you know, you'll get the feel for those in terms of like what size company you are and what you can go for. So that'll help you in terms of finding out those opportunities. And so when we go back to the business center, if you're wanting to see, this is really helpful in terms of if you're trying to market. So if you look under contracts and you go look for like request, we do a lot of contracting in the airport for under RFPs. We do RFQs and those kinds of things once in a while, but the RFPs are, and you'll see bids, information, qualifications, and you can go to those. So what you see in the first part of this is really important, is you see the actual formal procurements that we just took a look at. Then what you're going to see is these are proposals that are under review. So for instance, if you're talking about, just trying to think of anything that would be, okay, so Public Arts and Exhibits Master Plan. So what you would see there is proposals received. So we would go there, and what you would see there is who has actually submitted a proposal. And you would see that these are the 4 companies that did that. So that's a contact for you, is to contact that company. That doesn't mean that they were selected, but it could mean that they will be, one of those companies will be selected that you might want to partner with, or you just want to get to know who's interested in doing business at the airport.
Does this say false? I can't.
Pardon? What's the?
I was just wondering, will it say whether someone did grant that contract?
Yeah, that's next.
Okay.
Very good.
Sorry.
No, this is perfect. So this is a really good marketing site for you to build your database, is that if you go, okay, so you're seeing who's under consideration right now, so they haven't been selected. If you look at the proposals awarded for the current year, that tells you who got the contract. So that tells you who to go to right away, particularly like you're talking about the engineering companies. Go to them and offer them your services. Say, hey, here's what I got, you know, and here's what their contract is. The other cool thing about this site is that you see the project archives to your right? That shows you every RFP, every RFQ, every RFI from 2000 forward. So you can start to see who's working at the airport. So you can see in the revenue agreements, you can see who the concessionaires are, you can see all of that. So it's a great data-rich site that could give you that information in terms of how to do business or find out who to partner with. The other thing is, I routinely and am somewhat surprised is people don't already tap who they know. You don't, who do you already know? Who do you already do business with? Who actually can connect you to the next person? So I'll have somebody say to me, you know, I need to know how to do business with you. And I'm like going, well, who do you know? And they go, well, I know the Gilmores, I know G.E. Johnson, I know, it's like, and how's business going with them? What are you doing with them? Ask them what the next opportunities are in terms of what they're doing. you get a construction guide. It's like, it's word of mouth, but it's also you marketing and saying, who are my resources out there? How do I get hooked up? Like, who do I find out who the landscaping companies or the engineering firms are and stuff like that. So I gave you all of this. This is kind of like a step through the website. One thing you would want to do here is probably get in, if you see our real estate, now that's a whole new entity that's been created in the last 18 months. Real estate, we have the ability to develop about 1,800 acres on the airport property. It's always going to be a lease because we can never sell the land because of the airport having purchased the land. But there's going to be office buildings, there's going to be commercial space, there's going to be no living space. It's all going to be business related because we're relying on the communities that surround us to actually provide that connection and through the mass transportation that's there at the airport. So there's going to be job opportunities there. And so, yeah.
What's the name of that project?
It's a Den Real Estate. So if you go back, if we go back up here to, if you go back to the flydenver.com, that site, and then what I'm going to do is pop you into real estate. That's our real estate link. So go into that. They have a newsletter. Subscribe to that. It's free so you can see what's going on because they'll be advertising there about letting you know what's going on. But all the actual procurement of that is going to be on that business website. So when you saw, if you look on the back of your sheet here, you see real estate. That's where that's going to be. So there's going to be opportunity for engineering, for construction, for landscaping.
And how far along are they on with the construction?
They're just in the master planning stage, and they're actually about ready to put a proposal out for potentially a hotel. So, and they've done, they're trying to do some other development and stuff like that. So that's just starting, and that's like a 20, 30-year project. So that's not, that's what I say about the airport. It's not ever going to stop in terms of what's going on. There's going to be landscaping opportunities if you want to grow your business there. The other thing is if you go down to, got to give a plug, if you go down to that banner again, you'll see the Great Hall. And that tells you about what's happening with that Great Hall and in the terminal, about the project, how to get around it, but also how to do business with it if you're interested. So, and Misha is our representative as our P3, because it's the airport basically put together a public-private partnership. And she represents that team in terms of doing that redevelopment and stuff there. So that's important. There's also a newsletter there you can sign up for. And the other piece I was trying to tell you here too is that there is a Commerce Hub newsletter at the very bottom of this. Sign up for that because that'll tell you what's coming online in terms of projects. And will tell you opportunities not only for the airport, but the city of Denver and our partners. For instance, if PCL is looking for jobs and looking for projects and people to actually work with them on a particular project, they'll post it and we'll carry it on that website. So we're trying to actually be a central clearinghouse for those kinds of opportunities. So that's Den. That's Den in us in a nutshell, how to get around. We're always available for individual consultation that you want to sit down and talk to about opportunities that are coming up. One other thing to tell you very quickly is, and I have some copies of this, these are the contact sheets for all the big projects that are at the airport. They're all out and they're contracted, but they are, you got one? They're already contracted, so you'd be going directly with them and pre-qualifying. There's 24% goals on the concourse expansion contracts, and there's a 18% construction goal on the Great Hall, And then also in terms of, that's on the construction side, and then on the concession side, it's 25 or 30%, somewhere in there. So that's a good one to get into in terms of like if you're interested in doing some retail or whatever and being able to scale or whatever you want to do. So, but these are already in the pipeline, already been selected, but opportunity for you to connect. So what I have extra copies here is if you're interested in looking at a kiosk. If you're a small business just starting, it starts to give you a goal in terms of like what you need to do. The other thing that really actually is stunning to people when they're talking about retail at the airport or food and beverage or even packaged food that could be sold on a kiosk. For instance, we had beef Climax jerky, started with this like 7 years ago. And they have 3 kiosks. They have one on each concourse. And they're probably over $1 million annual revenue a year now. But think about who they have to serve. They have to serve 65 million people going through there a year. They have to be open 18 hours a day. They have to actually have the product. So we, for instance, there's anecdotally, we had one retailer that was going to sell branded NFL shirts and caps and all that paraphernalia. Well, he had a 2-week lead time to get the material. He was out in 2 days and had to sit there with an empty kiosk and paying us rent. And so the volume is a big shocker. The volume is an incredible shocker for people because you're open 18 hours a day. You have to be stocked all the time. There's like, right now there's hardly any lull at all. We've even got flights that are going out at midnight. And before we used to have a bank of time where there was like downtime. We have a bank now that's like probably from 1 a.m. to 3 or 4 a.m. And then United is also putting in another bank in the midday, which they haven't done before. So we're even seeing more use of the airport. So when you're talking about retail or packaged goods for a kiosk, what would be an excellent exercise, though, if you're thinking about anything like that, or you're going to refer any bank customers, is have them go through and meet with Provenzano, who is our master concessionaire, and they'll walk you through a business plan. And they'll give you a sense of what you need to have, what kind of capital you need to have to get started and to actually run a successful business out there. So if you're interested in those, you have that.